Okay. And now we are rolling into the Depression in Canada. So, as we said in the last video, things started off bad in the States. It rolls into the Canadian environment. Why? Because we are so dependent on the United States for buying our product. They're not buying our product. England is not buying our product. France is not buying our product, especially the farmers. So it really starts to have an effect across Canada. Is everybody out of work at this time? Is it a worldwide depression? Nobody is working at all. What do you think, Logan?
I think like the big games like company owners, stuff like that are still work, but smaller like businessmen that are working in factories are out of them jobs.
Sorry, what was that? Some of them are in a job?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, there's still people out there who are buying cars. There's still people out there who are, needing to get stuff. It's kind of like when we shut down as a nation a couple of weeks or a couple of months ago at the beginning of this whole COVID crisis. I mean, sure, we shut down the economy, but not everybody shut down. There were still essential workers who were going out there and doing their jobs. There were still people who were working in the grocery stores. Not everybody. That was cut back drastically. Instead of having a workforce of, say, the local Zares, 150 people, they might be down to 50. Why? Because of shortened hours, because of less supply, because of people not being able to make it in for whatever reason. So this is definitely something that's happening. Okay, so the workforce is not completely decimated, but it has shrunk considerably. There's still a lot of people working, but at this point, unemployment is hitting 25 to 30%, and that is significant enough that it takes a huge toll on all of Canada. So if you're unskilled, if you don't know a general or a skilled, tradesmen, people who are working in specialized industries, trying to think. So auto manufacturers, if you're skilled in that, then you're probably going to be better off than somebody who's just working on a line, putting a tire on, putting a tire on, putting a tire on. We can find anybody to do that, and we're going to find somebody else who's going to do it cheaper. But if you're skilled labor, you're pretty safe. Not totally, because there is skilled labor who is losing their jobs as well, but overall. But there is very few jobs available for the average person, especially men, during the Great Depression. People, if you were going to be hiring somebody, would hire a family man. Why? Because they're probably stable, probably more likely to stick around. They are looking out for that person who has the family because you are supporting the wife, the kids. And just from a ethical standpoint, it was better off in the minds of the business owners to hire married men. Single men, pretty much are out of luck. So some were able to keep their jobs. For those who weren't, they had to go to the relief camps. We will get into the relief camps in a few minutes because it is on the test, and you will be doing something about this in a little while. Unfortunately, life in the relief camps was not the greatest, and we'll get into that. Another option for unemployed men in the 30s was basically to move, find better jobs. There are a lot of people who are, nothing is available in St. Catharines. GM shut down. Hamilton, maybe they're going to be making some steel because they're still shipping the steel off to Detroit. Detroit is still making a few vehicles, not as much, but the steel industry is still around. So instead of working in St. Catharines, I'm going to find my way into Hamilton. And I'll stay in Hamilton for the time being, and then I'll come back home whenever I can, visit the wife and kids, and that's pretty much the transient life. Problem with the transient lifestyle, especially if you were young and unattached, you were not married, you couldn't apply for things like relief. You couldn't get the unemployment insurance that Bennett is going to be introducing later on. Why not? Why couldn't you get the benefits? Anybody? You had no proof of residency. You didn't have a place where you were established. So what's to say somebody is not jumping from St. Catharines to Niagara Falls to Welland to all over the Niagara region and claiming benefits in each of those areas. You had to have permanent residency somewhere. A lot of these people, they lost their houses in the stock market failures. So that creates a bit of a problem. Women were working during the Depression. It was unacceptable for a woman to take a man's job. It was cheaper for the company owners because women worked for a much cheaper wage, as we've discussed before, and still kind of an issue today for some areas. If a man is making 80 cents an hour, a woman is making 50 cents an hour, well, which one are you going to hire? Probably the one who's working for less. But the women who were doing that, they weren't looked upon very favorably. And if you were working as a woman, it really created the kind of gender stereotypes that you weren't a very nice person. You were stealing from the man, you were kind of emasculating him. And it really did kind of resonate through until the end of World War II, and then even into the 60s, where the idea of a woman's place is in the home. This is kind of really where it came back into fashion. The 1920s, women were going to work, women were enjoying their freedom, women were gaining rights and freedoms, and not just freedoms of things that they were able to do socially, but things that they were able to do from a legal perspective. This comes crashing to a halt during the Depression. Prime Minister during the 1929 crash in the very, very early part of the 30s, William Lyon Mackenzie King. Very, very lucky guy. Why is King lucky? He's lucky because he loses the next election. He is popular during the 1920s when things are great. He is popular when there is a huge boom that's going on. But the collapse came on his watch while he was still Prime Minister. So people are looking at it saying, well, he should have done something to protect us. He should have done something that would have saved the Canadian economy because we are so reliant on the Americans. So we're going to get rid of him. And again, this is when people are thinking that the crash is only going to be a couple of months. So they're thinking we're going to get rid of King. He is too out there in his ideas. We're going to put somebody back in power who is a businessman. Somebody who is good talking with the business leaders, who knows how to talk to people, can get the factories opened up again, who can get the businessmen to do the things that we need to do in order to survive. He's going to make Canada great again. Does that sound like anybody that we know of down in the States, right? Well, for the next couple of months anyways. King loses the election to a gentleman named R.B. Bennett, who is a very wealthy individual. He is the head of many industries. He is a business tycoon. He is somebody who is kind of popular because he is known to be such a businessman. As I said, R.B. Bennett, he is pretty much early form of Trump, and we will get into that in a few minutes. 1930, the people are voting for Bennett because he promised them the cure for the Depression. I know what we need to do. I can make Canada great again. I can rescue us from what's going on. However, by 1932, 4 provinces are now bankrupt. As we saw in the last section, you've got the wheat, which went from, $1.10 down to 29 cents a barrel in 3 years. The farming for the prairies went from 363 million to just 10.7 million in 3 years. These provinces are broke. They've got nothing left that they can do. They are financially destitute themselves. They turn to the federal government and say, we need help. Well, what's Bennett going to do? He can't really do too much. Liberals, the Conservatives with Bennett, they're not doing a whole lot. The Liberals, they don't have much. They're just kind of sitting in the background, head down, keeping quiet. King is kind of licking his wounds and saying, should I be running again? Should I not be running again? We're not sure. So Canadians, they start to come up with some new ideas. What might some of these new ideas be? Before I flip the slide, let's see if anybody's got any ideas. What are some of the new ideas? Oh, look at Nick, he's looking at the next page trying to see what it is. What are some of the new ideas, government-wise? What's happening in the rest of the world? Russia, for example. Who's taking over? Yep, look.
What?
I was just saying, who's taking over in places like Russia?
Well, I don't know.
Communists. What is the idea behind the communist idea or the communist philosophy? What does Yep.
Everybody's equal.
Everybody's equal, which means what? From an economic standpoint. Anybody? Yep.
Everybody gets paid the same.
Everybody gets paid the same. Everybody shares in the wealth. We're not going to have the 1%, the rich anymore. We're going to spread that money around to everybody. So some of these other parties start sprouting up that have this idea in mind. One of them is the social credit. They're basically saying the difference between the price paid to the producer and the price paid by the consumer, this is what leads to poverty. So I am building my iPhone for $15. And then I'm going to turn around and charge $3,000 for you to buy that. Well, that disparity in there, that is what's making the Bill Gates rich. Meanwhile, the people who are building it, it's costing $15. They're only getting, say, $10, $11 an hour. And, that disparity, that is what's really causing the problems. So maybe we should just wipe that out. Make it a government rule that we are going to get rid of that type of disparity. Make it so that if they're billing you for $15, you can still make a nice income if you're charging $30 for it. Wouldn't that be nice? Get the new iPhones for $30 instead of $100 or instead of $1,000. So that's the social credit idea. The CCF started with J.S. Woodsworth. This is more of the Communist Party in Canada. They are really responsible for something called the Regina Riot, where they kind of induced men to stand up for themselves, equality of people. We'll get into Regina in a minute. These are just two of the big parties that start to crop up. NDP kind of is an amalgamation of both of these parties. So the Depression sets in just as Bennett takes over as Prime Minister of Canada. He is sunk. He's promised to end unemployment. He's going to use tariffs to, get into the world market. Say we're not going to let things come into our country anymore free of charge. We're going to start charging for it, so that way our companies start making things. Our companies are able to build the chairs, the desks, the tables. We don't have to ship the wood to the States anymore or anywhere else. We've got the resources. Why not make the manufacture? 33 depression still worsening. Thousands of farms and businesses are ruined. A quarter of Canadians are out of work by this point, and in 1928, farmers have purchased 17,000 tractors. By 1932, that number's dropped to less than 1,000, only 832. That is a significant drop. What happens when that happens? People aren't working. People aren't going in there to build the factory or the farms, to build the tractors. As we said, yes, there are still 832 that are being bought, so somebody's going in and making the sales, doing some of the work, but the person who is on the floor is not working anymore. The New Deal. Franklin Delano Roosevelt states he creates this New Deal. The idea behind the New Deal is the government is going to get people back to work again. He's creating projects like the Hoover Dam. What does the Hoover Dam do? Anybody? In the States? It's a power supply plant. So, he's doing things like that. He's creating national parks. In order to create national parks, you need the roadways. In order to do the roadways, you need people to build the roads. So he's putting people to work doing this type of thing. He's building monuments. He's building buildings like the Empire State Building. He's making sure that they continue to go. Why? Because that way people are working. The idea being people are working, going to start spending money. People are spending money, they're going to create the jobs. So this is Franklin Delano Roosevelt's idea. And he's also coming up with some new things called unemployment insurance, minimum wage, maximum hours. So you're not working 60 hours a week anymore. We're going to break that up to 40 hours, give some other people a chance to work. He's making farm prices and government intervention. So he's coming up with all these things. And Bennett takes a look and says, this guy's got some good ideas. I'm going to follow suit. You know, Canada and the States were trading partners. So if we follow suit, I'm going to implement these same ideas. But it doesn't work out as well for him. And as you guys did in your presentation, Bennett loses the 1935 election. I think everybody was able to get on and listen to the speeches to that section. So he was considered a poor leader by some because of what happened in the world while he was on watch. He is the one who's running things, and the Depression is placed squarely at his feet. He wasn't able to bring us out of the recession the way that Roosevelt was starting to do. It was on his watch. He promised us that he was going to end this depression. He promised that he was going to end it, and we didn't just go into a depression, we went further and further into it. So who do you blame? You blame the guy at the top. But he did take the initiative, creating things like the Canadian Wheat Board, Broadcasting Association, his version of the New Deal, the Bank of Canada, that's one of the big ones. Financial security, making sure that all the banks have to run based on one idea. Not each bank coming up with its own ideas, its own promotions, its own way of dealing with things. Bennett is the one who kind of consolidates it all to make sure that everybody is equal. But, he is seen as the Trump of the day. You can see from this picture here, artist's depiction of R.B. Bennett. Every face is that of the Prime Minister. So he's talking to his board of governors who are all him. Even the pictures up on the walls are of Bennett. It's basically seen as if he is going to be running things the way that he wants to. Who remembers what happened in the Bennett presentation package when I gave that to you guys last time? Somebody asked for Bennett for a pair of long johns. What happened? Yep. We sent him the cash for it, yeah. So, this is out of his own pocket. Anybody read any of those other articles that what he was doing? Tess?
I think it was like a mother or something asking for money, and then he sent her like $5 to pay.
Yep, so he's using his own money. He's sending it out. He's a rich guy. People are seeing him as out of touch, but he's still doing this stuff. He's rich, so he's sending it out of his own pocket. He's not doing it from the Canadian government perspective. He's trying. He's making an effort. How many people thought that in your presentation or in your written assignment that Bennett was the reason why he lost the election? You thought he was? Why?
I think it was like his character, like although the New Deal had been promising and had been, people really didn't trust him because he was too associated with trouble.
Okay, he was too associated with the depression and the struggle, so they wrote him off. Even though these things are starting to work in his favor. 1935, next. We'll get into that in a second. So 1935, he does lose the election, and that is really the start of the turnaround because of these policies that Bennett's introduced. And who becomes prime minister again after 1935? Anybody? Mackenzie King. So he leaves government at the time when the Depression starts. He comes back as the Depression is starting to disappear. Like I said, luckiest guy in Canadian political history. But one of the things that Bennett does do is he creates these government relief camps. And this is an assignment that you guys are going to be working on in the next little while. And what was the government relief camps? These were for young, unmarried men. And it was basically the idea of we're going to get these guys off the street. We're going to give them a place to go. We are going to house them. We are going to shelter them. We're going to have them build the roads just like they're doing down in the States. We're going to have them build the parks and the monuments just like they're doing in the States. We're going to have them, create all this stuff just like they're doing in the States. But what's one problem with Canada versus the States? Think of climate. These guys are working in harsh conditions up north compared to in the States where when they're working up north, they're still much further south than what we are. The Hoover Dam and stuff, that's down in California. These guys are working in northern Ontario. Right idea, wrong climate. One of the things with the camps, General McNaughton, he calculated that for $1 a day, including 20 cents pay, a man can be housed, fed, and put to work with simple tools. 20 cents pay a day. This is not an hour. This is how much they're making a day, 20 cents. Well, sure, you got no place that you're going to go and spend it because you're stuck in these relief camps. The relief camps themselves, they're voluntary, so you can leave at any time, but you're up in the middle of Nowheresville, northern Ontario, Flying River or something like that. You got nowhere you're going to go. So you're kind of stuck. You're making 20 cents a day. The $1 a day is for the food, the board, all that type of stuff. So the housing and everything else, that's where the dollar's going. All these guys are making out of this 20 cents. At first, everyone welcomed the idea, we're going to get these young men off the streets. Hey, this is great. Matthew has been sitting around all day at home doing absolutely nothing. Brian has been working, but he's just lost his job. These are two young, strong, unmarried guys. So we're going to send them off and get them to actually do something. Logan is, he's in the same boat. So we get rid of all of these young, single, unmarried guys, ship them up north. And the idea is fantastic, again, in theory, because they're creating something. They're doing something with their lives. They're not, I'm not sure if it was Ryan and his post, I think it was, said people who are just basically quitting their jobs, sitting at home, and not doing anything. Okay, so we're getting rid of all that type of aspect. If you're going to get the money, you're going to get something, you're going to work for it. When you're making 20 cents an hour, that's when they came up with the idea of slave camps. I mean, they're working for almost nothing, and they're working in harsh conditions. And like I said, what were they doing? They were building parks. How is that really going to benefit anybody? It's basically like I'm doing, manual labor for the sake of doing manual labor. So December 1934, men around Vancouver, the camps there, they go on protest. They go out on strike, and they go out on strike for about 2 months. After 2 months, the government comes to them and says, okay, well, we're going to look into your concerns and your issues. And, that's not a problem. We'll deal with it, and we'll get back to work. So you guys go back to work. Not a problem. So after the 2 months, December, January, these guys go back to work. By April, they're saying nothing is happening here. April 4th, they go out on another strike. And these are the things that they were asking for. They were asking for an increase of up to 50 cents an hour. Remember, the guys in Winnipeg, they're going out on strike for, what were they making? 80 cents an hour. These guys are asking to be bumped up to 50 cents an hour. A decade later, they were asking for at least 120 hours of work a month. So, they were asking for more increase in pay that way. They were asking for adequate first aid supplies. They're getting injured out of the job. They're doing things that are dangerous that they've really had no training for or anything like that. They're just getting thrown up north and saying, okay, start building the roads. If you start, clearing out the forest area, they're getting injured. So they're saying, okay, come on up here and, give us some first aid supplies. Give us something. Extension of the Workmen's Compensation Act. So they're getting injured, and if you're not going out to work, then you're not getting even paid. So they're asking for just some basic civil rights here. Recognition of democratically elected workers' committees or the Communist Party. that workers in camps be granted the right to vote in the election. They're not even able to vote in order to try to better themselves. Why? Because they're not in a set environment. They are not set as to where they are living. So if you're not set in your place of residency, you're not allowed to vote. These guys are saying, with everything that we're doing, we should at least get the right to vote. And why don't the governments want them to vote? Why do you think the government's saying no vote? Yep.
Probably vote no.
They'll probably vote,
Government out.
probably vote them out, exactly. Muffled mask. So, yes, because the government's afraid that they're going to vote them out of power. This is the life that I'm leading. Like I'm living as a slave laborer in a camp up in the middle of nowhere. I'm voting these guys out. I'm getting somebody in here who can actually do something, like the Communist Party. This is a real threat at this time. It's the last one, the camps be removed from the Department of National Defense, because the Department of National Defense, they're running it as if it's a military base. You get up, you follow my orders, you understand, and there's no yes or no's about it. Yes, sir. These are regular guys. These are high school students who have just graduated high school or whatever, and they're being treated horribly as if they are being run by the army. So, 1935, the communist organizers in the camps, they organized a trek. This trek of 7,000 workers set off from BC, looking to go up north, looking to go to Ottawa to say, these are our rights, and we're being, denied them. So this is what we want. Remember, this is the Communist Party who is organizing this. This is important because the Canadian government, the American government, the British government, all the other governments around the world, they're seeing what's happening in Russia and some other countries where communists have taken hold. And when that happens, first thing they do is get rid of all the political leaders. These guys are afraid for their lives. So they're saying, we got to stomp out these communists. Something that happens as we get into World War II. Communists all of a sudden become our friends, but afterwards, no more commies. Commies are bad. That's the idea. So they don't have much success in Vancouver, so they decided to actually head into Ottawa. And they're doing this on huge trains. And you can see the people, they're just packing into these train cars as much as they can. They get from Vancouver all the way to Regina. The government decides that they're going to stop these strikers in Regina, Saskatchewan. They can't come any further because it's not safe. It's not safe for them. As you can see the way that they're piled into these trains. It's not safe for the people in Ottawa. They're afraid of what's going to happen when these young men finally get let loose in a town. So the government decides to stop them. And when they do actually have a clash by the midnight, it's a clash between the RCMP and the strikers. Again, this is going to be in the package you guys are going to be reading in a few minutes. A policeman was dead, 80 people injured. Bennett says, I defeated the commies. I have won. Kind of going back to the idea of Trump, with his posts and everything. And people really, the message still got through, and that's one of the reasons why Bennett was ultimately. Okay. Decibel, do we have time for that? We do not have time. Okay, I'm going to stop there.